Welcome to the Chronicles of Not Jay. I'm flying solo tonight, at least for a little while, maybe the whole night. I don't know how long we're going to go tonight. I'm not feeling the best. I actually stayed home from work today with a bit of a fever, pretty bad cough. So if I mute myself, it's because I'm in a coughing fit and I don't want you guys to have your ears blown out. So here we are. And tonight I was hoping to have some of the guys with me so we could have a good discussion. But we'll go with just me tonight. I was wanting to talk to everybody or with everybody about what our favorite weapons or weapon systems were for throughout history, and we can still do that. I'll tell you what my thoughts are, what how I feel about things, and of course you guys can talk to me and text her here. In fact, we've got Dave Hall says Happy Best Equipment Day, and Chuck is here with Evening. Howdy guys, thanks for popping in and taking a look. So like I said, we'll go forward. If any of the guys decide to show up and hop on, great. If not, that's okay too. Before we do too much of a dive into what we're going to be talking about tonight, I do, of course, as always, want to mention Wiley Games and Fistful of Lead. Right now, they've got until December 31st 10% off all PDFs. So I don't think that requires a code. If it does, I'll put it down below. But any PDF that you purchase between now and the end of December will get a 10% discount. And remember, Robin is going to keep track of all your purchases. So when you hit certain marks, you'll get swag sent to you. For instance, when you hit the $200 mark, you'll get a coaster. As you can see, mine has been well used. Yours will not. It will come to you unused as mine has been. At $400, you will receive the Nifty Difty Can't Game Without It. You'll get the Nifty Difty Can't Game Without It tape measure. At, I believe it's $600, you'll get a stack of coasters, 5 coasters. This is what they look new. As you can see, no condensation stains. And then at $800, you get the Nifty Dice Tray. 1,000 gets you a ball cap. It's black with the embroidered Wiley Games logo on it. And then, of course, at $1,200, you will receive a Wiley Games T-shirt. It's red with the Wiley Games logo. So, and this counts all of the stuff that's on their store, whether it's PDFs or it's hardbacks or it's posters or it's what have you, cups, mugs, T-shirts. If you can buy it at wiley-games.com, it's going to go towards your total. So go buy up the stuff, get the free swag, and enjoy Fistful of Lead as I do. There are other ways for you to get the swag as well. You don't have to just buy stuff from them. They're going to have contests throughout the year. They'll make those announcements. They'll send out an email newsletter to everybody that's subscribed. That's the other thing. You do have to be subscribed to their newsletter from the website. But they'll send out an email saying, hey, if you want to have a chance to win one of these nifty swag prizes, this is what you do. And of course, I'll talk about it also. But the other thing that's going on right now is Jay is taking pre-orders for the hardback edition of Fistful of Lead Galactic Heroes version 2. Not only is it going to be the hardback of Galactic Heroes, but it's also going to include Starfighters, excuse me, as well as the vehicle profile, as well as Galactica, Encyclopedia Galactica type thing with all different pre-created characters. So I believe that is pre-order. That's the only way you're going to get one, is by ordering it now. It's going to show up in June of 2020. It's ready to go. This isn't a Kickstarter or anything. It's going to happen. It just they're not going to keep any in stock because they're very expensive to have on hand. They can't upfront money to have any for potential later orders. So if you want one, you're going to have to get in on the order system now. I'm going to be ordering mine next week, and it will be a joy to have, of course. So tonight we are going to be talking about my favorite different weapons, whether it's a hand weapon or a squad weapon or an entire weapon system. I'm just going to talk about them, and I'm going to start off with aircraft. I've got several that I just absolutely love. Of course, the A-10. How can you not love the A-10? It literally is a Gatling gun with wings. As y'all know, or as y'all might know, the entire gun system, the aircraft was built around the gun system, and the entire gun system is something like 17 feet long from tip of barrel to back of the magazine of the weapon, and it's as tall as a VW Beetle, a 60s VW Bug. It fires 30 millimeter depleted uranium rounds, which is insane. So it's a very dense round, and will tear through a good amount of armor. It is just crazy what this thing can do, to the point where if the pilot keeps on the trigger too long, the recoil force will negate the thrust of the aircraft and cause it to stall. So yeah, it's a beast in the air. I've seen the A-10 demonstration team fly at several air shows. Loved every second of watching them. How they fly, in combat scenarios. I've never seen a live fire with them because, well, I'm not in the Air Force, and well, I wasn't in the Army to the point where I went to war. So yeah. But just the A-10 is just an amazing aircraft. I love it to death. The fact that the United States Air Force keeps saying we want to get rid of it, and the United States Army and Marines Corps says, can you rethink that, please? Or if you really don't want it, we'll take it. Thanks. Means a lot. I mean, this aircraft is from the 70s, and it's still a great aircraft, probably one of the best close air support aircraft ever to come into existence. So that's one of my favorite aircraft. Another one of my favorite aircraft is the B-25 by, well, North American, but both the B-25 and the C-130 were built by North American, and the B-25 was just a great medium bomber. It had some pretty good legs to get it to where it needed to go, um, and the fact that the Army Air Corps thought it was a great um, airframe to put a 75 millimeter howitzer into the nose just makes it all the better. They was it yeah the the fact that they would go hunting ships with this thing in the Pacific, firing a 75 millimeter round. Oh yeah, and it also had just scads of 50 caliber rounds as well. Just insanity. Chuck says B-52 A-10 get better with age. Absolutely. The fact with and I'll come back to the B-25 and touch on it slightly, just a little bit more. But the fact with the B-52 is that there are grandsons flying the exact same aircraft that their grandfathers flew during the Cold War, attests to the longevity of the B-52 as well. It is crazy how long that aircraft has been in use. So yeah, I don't want to say I'm not a fan of the B-52 because it's a great aircraft, but it's just not one of my favorites. Um, as far as bombers go, like I said, the B-25, of course. Uh, I really like the B-25. Um, I dig the B58 Hustler. One of my scoutmasters when I was growing up, it was actually I think he was I think he was a navigator. Might have been a pilot for the B58. I'm not sure, but Mr. Alexander was a crewman on the B58 uh, during its uh, during its existence in the Air Force. So that was kind of cool, and I love the sleek look of it. The fact that it was designed to do one thing, and that was to fly in low, fly in fast, and drop its bomb and get the hell out. Um, Definitely was pretty cool. I really really like that. Yeah, Chuck, the M&M Mustang and the Mosquito. Mosquito was a cool aircraft. Also, I love the sound of the Mustang. I absolutely love the sound of the Mustang. That Merlin V12 just purrs like a tiger. I know tigers don't purr, but you know what I mean. It's just the sound of it. Almost as good as the twin radials on the B-25s. Nothing beats the sound of the 25 the B-25s, unless it's the four radials on the B-17 or the B-24. Those are just I just love the sound of piston engines. Don't get me wrong, jet engines have a great sound. It's, as I like to say, the scream of freedom. But there's something about piston-driven engines that really, really uh, I enjoy. Now, probably my all-time favorite aircraft is the SR-71. When I learned about the SR-71 when I was growing up in the 80s and saw it for the first time, I fell in love with it. Um, Jay, my brother is here. Hi, Jay. It says I may be biased, but the A-10 has been surpassed as a CAS platform by nearly everything else in the United States Air Force inventory. I would have to, begrudgingly agree. Um, I just there's just something about being able to sling 30 millimeter rounds at a high rate of speed that just kind of you know lightens up my mood. I don't know what it is. It's a pretty good aircraft. I know it's destined to go to the wayside eventually, probably sooner than later, but it's it's going to it is going to be begrudgingly replaced by other aircraft, much as my favorite naval aircraft, the F-14, was. Um, for the longest time, I felt the United States Navy did a severe disjustice to the F-14 by replacing it by what I thought, in my completely unprofessional and uneducated mind, by the F-18. I thought the F-14 was a much better platform for fleet protection. But what do I know? I'm just, sitting here in my chair, being an armchair admiral, armchair general, kind of like people are armchair quarterbacks on Monday. Same thing. Um, yes, the F-18 has turned out to be a wonderful aircraft, doing the job superbly. I just thought the idea of the F-14 sitting up there, being able to fire off its Phoenix missiles at 100+ miles at 6 distinctly different targets was the epitome of holy crap, that's awesome. But so the F-14 and the A-10 are unfortunately going to go by the wayside. Um, you know, it happens. As far as cargo aircraft goes, I love the C5. It's a really, if you've never seen one, they're bigger than you could even imagine. Um, it's just, I find it hard to believe that that thing actually flies. I've seen them fly. Um, I in high school I was at a football game at the North Side School District's stadium that was uh, paralleled by the flight line a couple miles, south of us, but we could see C-130s flying into Kelly Air Force Base. Uh, Gigantic, just enormous airplane. Let's see what else my brother has got to say here. 30 millimeter gun, unless useless for its intended purpose, can't penetrate modern tanks. The majority of A-10 kills from Gulf War 1 and 2 were via Maverick, a missile that can be carried by every other U.S. Air Force one-seater. Agreed, yes. Um, and then the C5's not a bad ride. You sit backwards in the passenger deck. Right. Yeah, if I remember correctly, that's about 100 to 150 seats above the cargo area. Just it's just massive. I would say it's like a house flying, but it's bigger than a house. Well, bigger than my house. It's gargantuan. Um, so just but you gotta love the C-130 also. Another one of those aircraft that's been around for forever, and they've just kept reworking it and making it better and building it out, and just being an overall, do everything type aircraft. It's a cargo plane. It's a close air support aircraft, and and by close air support, I mean the AC-130 with its 20 millimeter Gatling guns and its 40 millimeter Bofors cannons, and it's got a 105 millimeter cannon howitzer in the side of it. So sure, it's close air support, and it can also be a bomber. Um, One of our dad's friends was a C-130 pilot, and I don't know if he actually flew one of the missions, but during Vietnam, uh, the C-130s would uh, carry these just ginormous bombs that would be pushed out of the back and just clear out an entire area for enough uh, uh, area. They were called daisy cutter bombs, and they would clear out the forest enough or the jungle enough to be able to land 2 helicopters side by side, uh, or bring in some howitzers to make a fire base. So Um, Jays also says the C-17 is cavernous as well, and the IL-76. Yeah, that's the now Russian, back in the day, Soviet-made Illusion 76. Charles checks as a history maker, the first assault rifle, Sturmgewehr 44. Yeah, I was going to get to infantry weapons here in just a minute, Chuck. But yeah, that was a pretty classic weapon, and yeah, the Daisy Cutter. Pretty. So the C-130 has been everything. It's cargo. The only thing it hasn't been is a dogfighter, and it probably wouldn't be a very good one either. so, so like I said, the SR. Going back to the SR-71 real quickly, when I found out about this aircraft for the first time, I was enamored by it. I had a picture of it on a poster of it on my wall. Actually, I had two posters at some point in time. One of it looking directly on as it sits on the flight line, and looking at it, nose on, just before it takes off, and then also the I had one of it, in flight. Just amazed me as a young teen. Um, you know, guy. There were guys that I knew that had posters of cars or posters of hot models. I had posters of spy planes on my wall. So those are those are kind of and like I said, the F-14. Now an aircraft that did not fare well in its time with the Navy, but I just absolutely love. I absolutely love the Cutlass. It was a mid-50s second generation jet fighter that performed horribly because, well, primarily it was underpowered, uh, and how it was built. It had a really tall forward gear, so it sat like this on the on the deck, and when it came into land, it just had a high angle of attack, and it was a horrible aircraft, but I just loved the look of it. And how I found out about the Cutlass was it was in a model aircraft carrier. I believe the carrier that I had the model of that had it was, I think, America or the Constellation or the Constitution, or not the Constitution, the Constellation. Um, let's see here. Hey, you sound like crap. I'm waiting to be called to the hospital. Youngest daughter at 103.2 temp. She has both shots. Just hoping it's the regular flu. Take care, Chris. Yeah, I know I sound like crap. Like I said, I stayed home from work today because I had a fever of about 100 degrees last night and about 100 and almost 101 this morning. So I decided discretion was the better part of valor, to stay home and not spread the crud. My fever did break, I hope. Last time I checked it, it was back below. It was back below 98, or back below. Well, my normal temperature like 97.7. So if I'm below 98, it means my fever is broken. I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping it just wasn't a low dip and then it's going back up again, because if I miss too many days of work, it gets ridiculous there. Anyway, I hope your daughter's feeling better. I hope it is just the flu for her as well. The flu is running rampant here in central Illinois, as as well as COVID. But best wishes to your daughter. Hope she gets better soon. So yeah, the Cutlass. It didn't last long for obvious reasons, but it looked so cool. That's what I'm looking at is the coolness factor. Modeling for Advantage, howdy sailor. Well, I'm not a sailor, but I've known some. The one last aircraft that I'm going to mention, and that was a personal connection that Jay and I have is with the F8 Crusader. Our uncle flew the F8 Crusader off of both Oriskany and Ticonderoga during the Vietnam War. So when you run out of F8s, you run out of gunfighters, as they used to say, because after that, the Navy thought, we're never going to need machine guns again. We're not going to need guns. Let's build aircraft without them. Little did they know that the F4 was going to take it in the butt, but they turned around and Chuck says, "Mini Warmut, all our best wishes. Hope all goes well." And yeah, known a few sailors, hey, winks. Not in the biblical sense, sir. But that was the F8 Crusader is also near and dear to my heart. See you, buddy. Give our wishes to her. So yeah, that's pretty much it with aircraft. They're all American except for the Mosquito. I dig the Mosquito. The Mosquito is a cool aircraft. And throw it in there. The Spitfire was always a cool airplane. The Hawker Harrier, the Lancaster bomber, the Sturmovik the IL-2, the original tank killer, along with the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka. 87? Yeah, I think that's right. My brother will come in here and correct me if I'm wrong. I know he will. But the Stuka was a pretty cool airplane. But as far as my favorites, it's got to be the F-14, the A-10, the SR-71, and then of course World War II. You got to go with World War II. You got to, for me, the B-25, the B-17, the Mustang. As far as naval aircraft go during World War II, the F-6F was just a cool. Just a beast of an aircraft also. Chuck, the stringback, the Swordfish, the one of the reasons why the Bismarck was a little bit easier to take out was because of that, and of course, laying to rest the entirety of the Italian Navy. Gotta love that. As far as armored vehicles go, I'm going to be a homer. I love the M60, the M60A3. I think the M60A2 was a cool looking tank. Its turret was really, really cool looking. It was a horrible deployment of the missile system, the 152 millimeter missile system that was on it. But I thought it was a cool looking tank. As far as other tanks, I love the classic look of the M4. Granted, it took a while for us to figure out, hey, we need to put a bigger gun on these things to make them worth anything. To the point where we didn't get out there until we got, we weren't on par with the Germans really on a tank for tank basis until we got the Jackson out there with its 90 millimeter gun. The Tiger was cool to look at, but from my understanding, was not as reliable as the crew probably wanted it to be. I think the Panzer IV was the Panzer IV. I think it was Panzer IV L Long 75 was a much better representation of German armor than just about anything. You had the later Panthers and Jagdpanther and whatnot, but I think classically looking at German armor, you look at the Panzer IV. At least in my mind, when I think of German armor, the Panzer IV comes to mind, with its turret towards the middle of the vehicle instead of towards the front like the T-34s and M4 Shermans had, more centered, which is more modern looking, in my opinion, more like the M60, more like the M1, more like the 55s, the 64s, the 72s from the Soviets. So as far as German tanks go, I got to go with the Panzer IV. Is probably my favorite from the look, just looks. It was the it pretty much handled the majority of German armored combat for vast majority of the war. So I don't know much about the European side of the conflict. That's my brother was always more well versed with the European theater. I seem to have been more more enthralled by the Pacific theater and the Navy, with all the battleships and the destroyers and the cruisers and all that. Chuck says all of the German cats had some kind of issue. Yeah, they did. And I think that's why I like the Panzer IV so much, is they were an all-around good tank. Very serviceable. They were not overly engineered like the Tigers were. Apparently that was one of their big failings, is that they were just so well engineered that they were actually difficult to work on. The Panzer III-J did well in the desert. If I remember correctly, that had the short 75 on it. Correct me if I'm wrong. It did well in the desert. Just never enough. They didn't have enough of them. So, but of course, I really like I don't know what version of Merkava they are on now, but all of the Merkavas, I think Merkava 4, 5, 6, whatever number they're up to now, have all had the ability to carry like a squad or a half a squad of men in them. So they could roll up into combat, pop open the back door, let the infantry go out, and support them. The J had the long 50. Okay, all right. They had so many different variants of all of their different tanks. It's hard to know. 5 dudes in a mortar in the Merkava. So who's expecting a tank to roll up and then infantry come out the back plus a mortar? It was pretty it was pretty gnarly. It definitely is a surprise the first time you come up against that, I would suspect. As far as armored fighting vehicles, other than main battle tanks, I'm not saying it's the best out there, but obviously something's going right with it, and that's the M113. Because they literally made tens of thousands of those things, used all over the world by just about every damn buddy that we could sell them to, and had so many different variants. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Charles, I think you're right. All the different variants of all of the German equipment uh, was some sort of supply headache. Um, that that probably is not far from the truth. Um, excuse me. Uh, but yeah, getting back to the M113, I mean, it's kind of like the C-130. It's done just about everything. It's a troop carrier. It's a mortar carrier. It's you raise the roof and put a generator on the front of it, and it becomes a command vehicle. It you put a tow missile system on top, and it's an anti-tank weapon. It's it's an ambulance. It's a forward observer for artillery. There's so many things that the M113 has done, um, even to the effect that, or even to the point that the Israelis put a turret on top with a 90 millimeter high velocity cannon. So it was a legitimate tank. Um, it's just it's it's not the best at any of those things, but because it could do all of those things, it got used for everything and still is used for everything in many nations. I'm If I'm not mistaken, there's still variants of M113s used by the United States Army potentially. I know that there are some second tier armies out there that are still using the M113 quite a bit. So, of course, you can't go too far down the line without talking about, uh, the Soviet BMPs or the BRDMs. The Soviets really seem to like um, armored variations of armored troop carriers to do different things. There seem to be just a plethora of different things. Uh, okay, Jay saying, "Yep, mortar carriers and ambulances." So there you go. Again, they've wanted to replace it with other things, um, but it just it does the job well enough that why spend the money on replacing something that can still do the job when we can go spend money elsewhere. Now, are we spending that money properly? That's a completely different discussion that I do not want to get into. But yeah, it's still utilized, and so are BMPs and their different variations for the well now the Russians. I keep wanting to call them the Soviets because that's until 30 years ago that's what they were. Uh, I'm showing I'm being ageist, I guess. Uh, but Chuck says, just reorganized my Avalon Hill Arab Israeli war counters. Forgot how many different M113s were in the counter mix. Yeah, there's just a truckload of them. If you go to Wikipedia and you look up M113, the list is as long as my arm. Hey, John from Joy of Wargaming. He says, "Heyo, heyo back." By the way, guys, if all things go as planned, John from the Joy of Wargaming will be joining us next Wednesday, Wednesday before Christmas. So, early Christmas present for you guys. We get Joy of Wargaming on the show. What does he say here? See you next week, brother. Absolutely. Been watching some of your videos. I love what you're doing there, buddy. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about stuff. What we'll talk about, who knows? I think McMurray is planning on either calling in sick or at least going in late, so he'll be there with us next week. Maybe some of my other co-hosts will join us as well. So yeah, so for armored vehicles, I got to go with the M60 and its variants. I really like it. I think it's the pinnacle of the mid Cold War. Uh, he says, had a game of chainmail on the table tonight. Oh, that's cool. I've been I've been painting. This is a preview of what y'all are going to see Friday morning. The Prince Eugen. So I decided to not paint her up like she was painted when she was with Bismarck. I decided to paint her up for Operation Cerebus. But I'll go into detail with that video Friday morning when I post it. So, excuse me. And as for Soviet armor, I really they all seem to be very just iterations of the same. From the T-55 forward, they just seem to be morphed from one to the next. Getting better, getting slightly better armor, getting slightly better guns, getting slightly better optics, getting better engines, etc. I know they're distinctly different vehicles. The T-55 is different than the T-64. The T-64 is different than the T-72, but it doesn't seem like you had as big of a jump from like when we went from the M60 to the M1 in design features, because you can't look at those two tanks and see how they're related, other than they're both tanks because they got treads, a turret, and a big gun on the front. Whereas you can see the evolution from the T-55 on through. But again, being of the age I am, and growing up, the T-72 is, to me, is the quintessential Soviet tank. I know by the time you're looking at mid to late 80s, they had the T-80 out by then. But back then we didn't know really anything about the T-80. So it was the T-72 that was the big nasty that we had to worry about come screaming across the intra-German border. So, like I said, the Merkava was a cool tank. The Leopard 2, I think, is every bit as good as the M1, if not better in many cases. I think where the M1, what's the word I'm looking for? Where the M1 surpasses all of our allies, other tanks, is the combination of the optics and the gun and the armor and the engine and all of that. I'm not saying the M1 is the best, but it's much like the M113. It does the job very well, and they've upgraded it. They continue to upgrade it to make it a better vehicle, a better weapons platform. When it first came out and carried that 105 millimeter gun, it probably would have had a very, very hard time against the T-72 and the T-80 that we didn't know about. And then when the Germans said, why don't we let you have some of these 120 millimeter guns that we've got on the Leopards? And the Americans were like, hey, yeah, that'd be cool. Then it became a much more effective weapon, I think. And then the ability to put a round on target while it's moving at 20, 25 miles an hour on cross country more effectively than just about anybody else was pretty good. The combat computer in there is probably for what it's doing is probably the best out there. So the M1 is, I'm not going to say it's the best tank out there, because it's not, but it gets the job done, and I really I like it a lot. I do like the Leopard 2s. I think the Challenger is also a good tank that the British put out. All of the what's crazy to me is we haven't had any significant improvement on tanks other than just upgrading what we have in the last 20, 30 years, which is same thing with other weapon systems like aircraft. You know, people think the F-22 is all brand new and spiffy and neat. That thing's been around since the early 2000s and was in testing in the late 90s. So it's 30 years old. The F-35, I'm not a giant fan of the F-35, only because they've made it into something that it wasn't supposed to be. It was supposed to be a low-cost replacement to the F-16, and it's now become this just ginormous money pit, and to the point where we're keeping the F-16 and just upgrading it, and we're keeping the F-15 and just upgrading it. But again, that's something else entirely that I don't ever want to get too deep into the politics of what choices are made by our military. And I'm not talking about politics of Republican or left or right or Democrat or whatever. I'm just talking about the politics within the armed services and the military industrial complex that makes decisions. I don't like getting into that. So, Chuck says the T-34, the quantities the Soviets built of these is mind-blowing. Sure messed up the Germans. Surprise! Jay says, hey, Chris, got a riddle for you. Go ahead, Jay. What's your riddle? While we're waiting for you to riddle me this, as far as personal weapons go, I love the M16. I became very, very familiar with the M16 when I was in basic training. It was a pleasure to. What's got 2 thumbs up and is shopping on LV 427 designs? That'd be you, sir. I've been looking at more of their stuff also. So, for those of y'all not aware of what LV 427 Designs is, they are the company that produces 3D printable STLs that I've been using here to create the hallways for my Battle of or the assault on Tantive 5. They've just got a literal plethora of different designs to use. Yes, I had an M16A1. It was really weird. Half of our basic training unit had A1s, half of them had A2s. So I had an A1 with a triangular hand grip. My bunkmate had the A2 with the round hand grip, the round furniture, I guess it's officially called. All I know is you don't want to wrap your fingers around the top of that because after firing the weapon, because the holes along the top there on the A1 are the right size for your finger to actually move into and touch that pipe, the blowback pipe, and it gets hot. You'll do that once. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed the M16 firing it. Um, it and the first time I went to fire it, I prepared myself in my brain. Okay, you're gonna. It's when you pull the trigger, when you squeeze the trigger to get a round off. Be prepared for a kick. I was used to the 30-30 that my granddad uh, taught me, how to shoot a rifle with and how much of a kick it had. And when I fired it, it was like, that was nothing. Okay, we this isn't going to be a problem. I'm not going to go back to the barracks with a bruised shoulder by holding it wrong. Yeah, I had the A1 open sight. He had the, if I remember correctly, mine was this type of, my sight was like this. This is the front, and then the back was like this, and his was the circular side aperture in the back with a post in the front. So keep in mind that our unit was a reserve unit. We were trained by the 95th Infantry Division training, which was a United States Army Reserve unit. So, yeah, go ahead. Well, again, that was 30 plus years ago also, so I could be mistaken on all of this. I've slept since then. But whether it was an A1 or A2 or whatever version of the M16 it was a pleasure to fire. Enjoyed it immensely. I unfortunately did not get to fire it for actual classification, but I did fire it quite a bit and enjoyed it greatly. Other weapons that I did not get to fire or even see being fired is the Mark 19, but I just like the idea of the Mark 19, being able to lob 40 millimeter grenades downrange at a decent rate of fire at a decent range. Just I dig it. I know that there's a Russian version that's similar. He says, I'm the same way when talking about MRAPs in Afghanistan with the, quote, ultra-modern gamer crowd. Mark 19 is lovely. You can see the rounds arcing toward the target. The AGS-17, that's the Soviet/Russian version. Is it also a 40 millimeter, or was it like a 30? I can't remember. You'll let me know. So yeah, of course the AK-47. A lot of people, I don't think this is accurate. I don't think Kalashnikov got a hold of the Sturmgewehr 44 and copied it. They look similar, but I don't think it's a copy. Okay, yeah, it's a 30 mil. That's what I thought. Still can do quite a bit of damage. 10 millimeters, give or take. 30, 40 millimeters, whatever it takes, right? the Sturmgewehr was the first assault rifle, um, being able to uh, have a high rate of fire and be, man portable. Um, right, exactly. Yeah, that people say, oh, it's a copy. It's not. There's difference enough differences to make the AK a different weapon. Um, and for the longest time growing up, I thought all AKs were AK-47s. Um, until later on in life when I realized, no, there's an AK-74 and an SKS and this and that. Some are made by the Chinese, some are made by Hungarians, some are made by Poles, whatever. Um, Slightly different. Mostly, if I'm not mistaken, the big differences uh, between the AK-47 and the AK-74 uh, are the chamber ground, so what it fires. It's this the same style of weapon between the AK-47 and the AK-74. It's kind of like the M16 to the M4 carbine. Um, they're based similarly, but there's enough differences to make it a different weapon. But yeah, it's the fact that the AK-47 or the AK series of weapons are just rugged and can be, dragged through the dirt and fired. Not saying that the M16 can't do that, but the M16 is a little more finicky. Maybe not these days, but you know the thing that we were taught in basic training is you've got to keep your weapon clean if you want it to. Uh, if you want to keep your weapon working properly, you've got to keep it clean, and you can't drag it through the dirt and expect it to work flawlessly. I'm not saying the AK can do that either, but um, we were definitely, it was pounded into us by our drill sergeants and our cadre that you got to keep that sucker clean if you want it to work properly. So, as far as World War II weapons, the M1 Garand or Garand, however you want to pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I don't know what's correct. The guy who invented it will tell us, or had told us at one point. I think it's Garand. But the point is, the M1 was a superb weapon. Definitely got the job done. But, as far as really terrifying weapons, you can't get more terrifying than the MG-34 or the MG-42. Those things were just monsters on the battlefield. Um, you know, I've actually heard one fired. Um, I think it was an MG. I want to say it was a 42. The Texas Military Museum down at Camp Mabry in Austin, Texas, has got a couple of them that they use during their reenactment weekends. And one of the one of the shows that the museum produces is, instead of an actual reenactment of combat, they will do this is the weapon, this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like and looks like when it's being fired, and they'll have the people, the volunteers, in the proper uniforms for the weapon that's being fired. So if it is an 1930 caliber machine gun, they've got United States infantry United States Army infantry uniform. If it's the MG 42, they've got a German infantry, not Waffen SS, the non-Nazi army, German army. I'm drawing a blank on what they were. Um, anyway, and they went, they would have compare and contrast of the different weapons. Here's the M1911. Here's the 9mm Luger. Here's the M1 carbine. Here's the Car 98. Here's the 30 caliber. Here's the MG42. Here's the bazooka. Obviously, they couldn't show how the bazooka fires. You know what I mean? Not the SS, the whatever the not SS were called. But this is what the Panzer Faust and the Panzer Schreck look like. This is what the bazooka looks like. This is what the mortars look like. All the way up to here's the APCs. And to the point of here's an M4 Sherman and here is a Hetzer. So they actually have a Hetzer also down there, which is pretty cool. So we got to see all of those in action. So yeah, they would run a belt of MG42 rounds, blanks, through the MG42, and it's terrifying. I can easily see why you would not want to assault a position with one of those things or more in it. It's insane. Of course, you also got the British Bren gun, the BAR for the Americans. Those are both pretty good weapons. So we've talked armor, we've talked infantry weapons, we've talked aircraft. What we're looking at now would be our favorite ships. Now, my all-time favorite ship is hello, dear.
Hello. What you might like a
Thank you. Cake. She brought me German chocolate cake because she's a dear.
Yeah, here's my little tin for you.
So, as y'all know, my all-time favorite naval vessel is USS Texas because yes, I am a homer. BB-35. Launched in 1914, served in both World Wars, and became a museum ship, if I'm not mistaken, the first museum ship from the World War II era in 1948. Dante says hi. Hello, Dante. Thank you for dropping in. There are other reasons why I like the USS Texas, other than me being from Texas. It's just, to me, it's a pretty ship. It's laid out in a way that I think provided the most at the time, the most firepower that that could be provided at the time. 10 14-inch guns and 5 twin turrets. So it was a good ship. It did exactly what it needed to do when it was asked to do it. It provided great ability to do fire missions on shore bombardments during landings, even to the point where during D-Day they flooded half of the ballast tanks, so it would take on allow the the guns to get a higher angle to fire deeper into France, um, because we need to bomb more Germans, um, to clear them out more. So I think that's pretty cool. Um, I as far as other ships go, of course you can't go wrong with the Iowas. The Iowas to me are probably those four ships are probably, in my opinion, the most beautiful capital ships built ever. I know I'll get this from British viewers saying that the Hood is the most beautiful ship ever built. It was a pretty ship, but it to me it just didn't have the sweeping lines that the Iowas had. Just gorgeous ships. Um, and not to make a dig, but none of ours went like this when they got hit by a single 15-inch shell. Just saying. Um, that too soon? Probably too soon. Um, the Hood is a great ship. I really liked the Prince of Wales, the KG5s. I thought they had an interesting way of getting their 10 guns into place with the uh, four gun turrets and a single 2-gun turret superimposed over the forward uh, guns. What I find interesting is the Nevada had 10 guns also, but they decided to do a 3 and 2 on the front and the aft, which I thought was a pretty interesting way of doing things. Um, I do like the Musashi and the Yamato. They also had very nice lines to them. Of course, now they're sitting as coral reefs, whereas the Iowas are sitting as museum ships, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, PT boats are cool too. The fact, and you had to be a crazy sob to fight those. Use fight them as with a weapon or as a weapon. Um, because here you are, a a plywood boat with a big diesel engine that probably came out of a tractor somewhere, zipping in and around destroyers and destroyer escorts and coming at the enemy with 4 torpedoes and at best a 20 millimeter, maybe a 40 millimeter gun, going up against your enemy. You had to be nuts, whether it was an American PT boat or a German S boat or the British E boats. You just had to be nuts to do that, just crazy. Um, but there you have it. That's what happened. Um, if you go farther back to in history uh, with ships, of course you can't go wrong with the Constitution. Uh, if by a lot of rusting metal and battleship row to consider there, you mean one ship? Yeah, you're right. Arizona did take a bomb in the same vein that the Hood did, but all of the others were refloated. Even Oklahoma was righted uh, and floated. She just sank again. So yeah. Um, and the ones that did get refloated and repaired kicked the crap out of the Japanese 3 years later at Battle of Surigao Strait. So we had that going for us, which is nice. But no, it's it, it it's it's bad form to be taking jabs at about the hood. That was a bad scene all around. And to be fair, you did get the Bismarck back, so that's always good. Oh yes, the PBY. I love the Pby Catalina. That was a fabulous aircraft. Um, the first time I saw one of those, uh, I just fell in love with the idea of an airplane being able to take off and land on the water. I had never had even the concept of that before I saw the PBY, and I thought that was just the neatest thing ever. Um, so, but going back, I like the ironclads from the American Civil War, the Monitor and the Merrimack. Also, the Merrimack, which became Virginia, if I remember correctly. Um, those are pretty cool. Um, as far as sailing vessels, like I said, the Constitution up against um, the Barbary pirates off of the coast of North Africa. Um, that was it's pretty cool. Um, triremes were pretty. I I like the. I want to get a game to where it's kind of a two-parter. The first part is the maneuvering of the trireme galleys, and lobbing rocks and arrows and whatnot at each other, and then getting in close enough to grapple, and then go from a scale of ships like this to scales of ships like this with 15 or 28 millimeter miniatures doing the boarding parties. You know, that's that'd be cool to me. So, well, I've been rambling for about an hour and 12 minutes. I appreciate everybody going along with me here tonight, with me flying solo, raspy voice, not feeling great. But I felt it was important that y'all had your Wednesday night show. Um, if y'all want to add anything, by all means, go ahead and add it. We got 6 of you out there. Thanks, Jay, for being bouncing back information on me. Chuck, thank you also for being there. Says flew in a seaplane once when we landed, thought we were going to sink. Water was over the window and the damn fuselage leaked. Yeah, that would be scary. I think that would be very scary. So, once again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and watching the show. I know this isn't the best show that I've ever had. It's a lot better when I've got my cohorts with me. But again, next week we're going to have John from Joy of Wargaming on. We'll have plenty to talk about there, I'm sure. So be on the lookout. Again, I'm posting videos Mondays and Fridays. I hope y'all are enjoying those. You'll see more about the Prinzeugen here shortly. Well, you'll see it Friday morning. So Friday morning American time. Would probably be at this point in time, I don't even know time wise. I think it's by that point in time, it's almost the next day in Australia. So, Melon for Advantage, you're very welcome for the show. Thanks for dropping in. I truly appreciate it. Maybe sometime we can get you to come on with me and the other guys, and we can talk about stuff. So. Be on the lookout for more videos, like I said, Mondays and Fridays. And next week, we've got the Joy of Wargaming. Remember the 29th, last show of the year. If you haven't already gone to the video of me announcing our 100 subscribers and put in there your choice of Star Wars figure that I've painted and what size shirt you would like for the Chronicles of Not JT shirt I'll be sending out. Definitely go over there, drop a note in the comments so you're available to be part of that contest. When we're going to go all the way up to about noon on Wednesday. That's when I'm going to collect all of the different names and all of the different options of what you want, and figure out how many I've got, and then I'm going to roll dice. We're going to roll dice to see who wins. So until next week, when we have Joy of Wargaming on with us, we'll see you on the flip side. Have a good night, guys.